Hey guys, welcome to Irish Medieval History, and this week I'd like to cover Welsh and Irish literature that is found within the Souls series. When I was researching this, I was actually very surprised at the lack of information that was found online. Previously last week, when I was covering the Witcher series, I was very surprised at how much information was out there to do with Slavic culture and Slavic literature that was found in the Witcher series. So I kind of was expecting even more information to do with Celtic literature, since a lot of people appear to be into Celtic folklore. However, I was very much knocked back last week and this week as well, when I had gone through the internet and found very scarce information. For example, there was only one video online on YouTube that had anything to do with Irish folklore and Welsh folklore that is found in Dark Souls series. That actually very much surprised me. And other videos that tried to cover any of this was really lacking information and would constantly turn to Greek and Norse mythology. And although Greek and Norse mythology does take up a tiny bit of the Souls series, I do fully believe that Welsh literature in particular is the majority of the mythology and folklore that has influenced the Souls series in itself. And just like George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones, where he found that folklore and mythology to do around the War of the Roses that was set during the 1400s was a good starting point, and also Lord of the Rings had a good starting point of using folklore from Anglo-Saxon. I do fully believe that the Japanese creators of the Souls series had used Irish and Welsh literature to influence them in their decisions, especially Welsh mythology, as we can clearly see King Arthur standing out like a sore thumb. Orlando, for example, it really does fit in with the world of the Celtic gods, in particular the people of Tuatha. These people are the gods of Celtic mythology, and they are located in the north, which is very similar to what we see in Dark Souls. Orlando also fits in very much with this description, and it fits more in with more of a Welsh interpretation of King Arthur's perfect paradise. In fact, in the game itself, this is where Guinevere lives, and here we can find many characters with Welsh names. Orlando may also be a play on words with London, which was once occupied by the Roman Britons that would eventually become the Welsh that we know today. Therefore, it would make sense that during the period of King Arthur, that this would have been seen as King Arthur's capital, and a form of the Tuatha De Danann, the kingdoms to the north, as the kingdoms of God. So together it was a mixture of Irish mythology, looking at it from the point of view of the Tuatha De Danann, and the Welsh point of view of King Arthur's kingdom. This therefore could be seen as a Welsh interpretation set during the 100 Years' War. Now I say 100 Years' War because if we look at the arms and armour of Dark Souls, the various long swords, the long bows, and also the armour, the full plate armour that we can see a lot of resemblance to the 100 Years' War, even the setting with the castles and the darkness. And by the time we get into Dark Souls 3, that feeling of this never-ending war, 100 Years' War, that really sticks out. So perhaps what the creators of Dark Souls were trying to highlight was a Welsh view of the 100 Years' War and their interpretation of the world, and folklore is the foundation to all of this. We can also see this with dragons as well that are seen in the game, and it happens at the time that dragons are a high influence with the Welsh at the time. Even their banner, a red dragon, sticks out like a sore thumb in this game, because dragons are one of the main highlights of this game. The way that Guinevere takes on a dragon, in fact, fits in with the folklore of Merlin and the red dragon. And it seems to me that the story of Merlin and the Red Dragon is really influencing the story of Dark Souls. For example, when Merlin digs up 2 dragons for the king, they are one dragon which is red and the other dragon is white. And although you can turn around and say in the Dark Souls series the colours are actually red and blue, in the Dark Souls series, blue is always next to white, the colour white. So we can see direct parallels between the 2 stories. Furthermore, in the game, the sorcery dragon, which is represented in blue, turns against his own kind, the rest of the dragons. And we can also see sorcery and fire magic, which is represented in red, are always fighting amongst each other, against each other. This is very interesting. The blue dragon had turned against his own kind, the other dragons. It seems to be a direct parallel to the story of Merlin and the Red Dragon. Although completely different stories, it seems to be a massive influence in the Souls series. 2 characters in Welsh mythology that's also very similar to the character Nito that's in Dark Souls as well. The first one being, which is Anku, who is the last person to die within the village itself, which is very interesting because in Dark Souls, Nito is the first person to die within the community, which is very much connecting the 2 of them together folklore wise, just the reverse way around. That's interesting in itself. Nito looks after the dead, and so does this spirit as well. And it's also very interesting as well that as long as you don't go in to cause harm within Welsh folklore in the graveyard, this spirit will never harm you. And it's the same thing with Nito. Nito goes as far as personally accepting you in his covenant himself. There's a lot of similarities there, especially the fact that the 2 of them actually protect the graveyards from dark spirits coming in. Furthermore, this spirit has a cart or a wagon piled high with corpses of skeletons. And if you clearly look at Nito, his whole body is a collection of spirits, collection of the dead. So there's a lot of similarities between the 2. Gwynedd is the second character that's very close to Nito as well. Gwynedd actually goes out on a wild hunt on winter weathers, on very winterous nights, going around collecting souls. And if you happen to see him, you may die yourself, which is similar to the first character as well. Gwynedd goes out personally himself to collect souls on winter nights and brings them to the other world. It's no shock that the 2 of them are highly similar to each other. Oh, I could literally sit here all day and talk about Welsh mythology in the Souls game, and there is a lot to look at. Even at the Solaire and the Green Knight, you can find so many similarities there as well. Regardless, what I want to focus on now, because this is Irish medieval history, is the Irish influence. Now, granted, there isn't as much Irish influence as there is Welsh influence, but there's still a good bit there. And I still take this from a Welsh perspective, because if you look at the 3rd DLC, there's a moment where it feels like you're travelling off to Ireland, and that is the DLC Ashes of Arundel, where you can actually see people in Irish armour in it, particularly the helmet, mail, the way they use their javelins. It's very Irish of that period during the 100 Years' War. This would have been the weapon and equipment that Art MacMora would have had. Furthermore, there are characters called Gael in it. Gael actually is native Irish people during the period of the 100 Years' War. That's what the Irish were called at the time. So there's a lot, during that DLC, there is a lot of similarities between the 2. Even the armour that's found in it, the slave armour, is very similar to what Irish noble armour could have been like. And the fact in itself that one of the main protagonists in this DLC was once a slave highlights the fact that the Irish were once cotton fodder. During the 100 Years' War in Ireland, Ireland has gone into the Gaelic resurgence and has started to beat back the English and started to take back their own independence. And I feel that Gael, which literally means native Irish, is a reflection of this in the DLC and has a massive influence. And in fact, the fact that this area is of winter actually goes back to what the Romo-Britons would have called Ireland earlier on, which is the Kingdom of Hibernia, the Kingdom of Winter. Also have the Millward Knights, which are actually very similar to the Ustamen, Irish Vikings as well. Now obviously I'm not saying that the Gaelic resurgence in Ireland at the time during the 100 Years' War is a massive influence on Souls series, but this DLC in particular does remind me of the fact that Dublin is starting to get wiped out. The English living in Dublin are under siege by Gael Irish. The Gaelic Irish people are outside the walls of Dublin pretty much, ready to take it back. So this is an exciting time in Irish history, and this DLC does remind me of how those people felt. Gael in particular, who represents the flame, is looking to snuff out these people within the DLC. Very interesting stuff. Now, of course, there's plenty more symbolism that I could easily get into, but for the sake of this video and to wrap it up, I will add that although the Souls series from 1 to 3 was very much influenced by Welsh mythology and Welsh folklore, and I'm not denying that other mythology and folklore had a massive influence on Dark Souls, it's just Welsh literature in particular really stood out to me, in particular the tales of King Arthur. Moving on, I feel moving into the next group, the next series perhaps of the Souls series, Elden Ring, has stood out as more Irish literature than Welsh literature, and some people have even speculated that the area that you now inhabit in is a new Tir na Nog, but more taken from a more Irish perspective rather than a Welsh perspective, and that you may be playing as the main protagonist a version of Oisin, a character that withered and aged away, and that the world itself, Tir na Nog, is at a point that it is reflective of Oisin, that it is withering away with time and age. Because if we're taking it from the point of view of a Gaelic man in the 100 Years' War, and Tir na Nog has existed now for 3,000 years perhaps, or even 4,000 years, it would be withered and aged away. In fact, when Oisin returns from Tir na Nog to Ireland, when he puts his foot down, time catches up with Oisin very quickly and he dies. It is also interesting that Oisin in himself has his own maiden that brings him to Tir na Nog in the first place. There is also many more symbolism, and there's actually a YouTube video that goes into more detail about this and Elden Ring, which I will link below. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for all the support you have given me so far. I'm actually only 200 subscribers away from making that first K and hopefully being more recognized as a proper YouTuber. My end goal is to try to advertise Irish medieval history the way it should be advertised, because I feel online it really gets put to the side, really kicked to the side. I have a video in fact that covers Ireland in the 100 Years' War, which is doing quite well, but it's the only one that actually does so, which is kind of funny in a way. Regardless, I feel like I'm starting to succeed in my mission of advertising Irish medieval history, and I hope this continues. So I'd really like to thank everybody who has supported me so far. I do plan on rising higher and advertising Irish medieval history more and more. So thank you for all the support you have given me, and all the best.